Uneven Steven, How Steven Crowder's Rhetoric and Skewed Data. Galvanize White Nationalists. Steven Crowder's rise from YouTube provocateur to one of the most visible conservative media figures has reshaped how right-wing narratives circulate online. With millions of followers and a massive digital reach, his show Louder with Crowder has become a key platform for younger conservatives seeking humor, ideology, and validation. But the style that makes him popular, mocking liberal ideas, presenting selective data, and framing arguments as just common sense, is also what makes his rhetoric dangerous. Researchers studying online radicalization have noted that Crowder's content often sits at the intersection between mainstream conservatism and the white nationalist fringe. His approach relies heavily on data that is presented without full context, statistical claims that exaggerate cultural threats, and jokes that reinforce social hierarchies. The result is a rhetorical pattern that mirrors the logic of far-right grievance politics. White men are losing their place, minorities are gaining unfair advantages, and institutions are conspiring against real Americans. Crowder rarely uses overtly racist language. Instead, he blends cultural commentary with humor, allowing him to dismiss critics by claiming it's all satire. This plausible deniability shields him from accountability while ensuring his message still resonates with audiences predisposed to racial resentment. Experts say that framing racism as just jokes doesn't neutralize the impact, it normalizes it. When delivered repeatedly, even ironic bigotry can lower the social cost of expressing prejudice and legitimize hostility toward marginalized groups. Data distortion plays a major role in that process. Crowder's show frequently uses cherry-picked or misrepresented statistics about crime, immigration, or gender to validate his audience's sense of grievance. These claims are typically framed as truths the media won't tell you, implying that mainstream journalism and academia are conspiring to suppress inconvenient facts. In practice, these truths often omit critical context or rely on unreliable sources. Scholars describe this as a form of data populism, where numbers are used not to clarify reality, but to fortify ideological identity. This pattern contributes to what researchers call the alt-right pipeline, a gradual process in which viewers of anti-political correctness or free speech content are exposed to increasingly extreme narratives. Crowder's videos act as a middle ground, normalizing resentment while keeping enough distance from open white supremacy to maintain mainstream credibility. Viewers drawn in by his humor or college debate antics are only a few clicks away from channels that drop the pretense and advocate explicit racial hierarchies. Crowder's defenders argue that he's simply engaging in political comedy, not hate speech. But intent matters less than effect. The social science on radicalization shows that consistent exposure to grievance-based content, especially content framed as defending a besieged identity, creates fertile ground for extremism. When that identity is implicitly white and male, and when the perceived threat is diversity, feminism, or immigration, the boundary between conservatism and white nationalism becomes porous. In this sense, Crowder's influence is less about what he says outright and more about what he enables. His framing of issues invites audiences to see themselves as victims of progress and to interpret equality as oppression. This inversion of reality, where inclusion feels like exclusion and accountability feels like censorship, is a hallmark of white nationalist ideology. Crowder's reach ensures that these ideas no longer sit at the margins. They circulate daily on major platforms, wrapped in comedy, skewed data, and charisma. That is what makes his message uneven. Funny on the surface, divisive at the core, and powerful in its ability to move resentment from the fringes into the mainstream. By normalizing grievance and dressing it as humor, Steven Crowder has become an unintentional architect of radicalization. His rhetoric may not call for violence or separatism, but it helps create the emotional and intellectual conditions where both can grow. In a media landscape where influence is currency, the danger is not just in what he says, but in how easily millions laugh along. This has been a No Sleeple Network production. Thanks for watching. If you like what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe.